Well, welcome back to the House of Common show. We're glad that you are spending your time watching this show with us. It's a joy for us to be able to put this on for you and to be able to hang out all together. Before we get started with tonight's show, we have a breaking announcement. One of our own, Adam Hoskins, has become a father.
Yeah.
Shout out to Hosky.
Yeah.
Hosky, take a couple of seconds. Big up yourself. Big up your baby. Go for it. Take that moment.
Yeah. We dropped the
Who got next?
on Saturday. We dropped the baby girl on Saturday. Get the mixtape. She's great.
Hey.
Her name's Micaiah Dale Hoskins. Micaiah means who is like the Lord. Dale is a tribute to my late father and late sister. And Hoskins is my family name. So we're happy. We're really happy. And we love her. Enjoy.
Is she around? Is she awake?
No. I'm not.
Okay. As long as you
not
don't
gonna
trade her for
fun
chips.
to
As
the
long as you
show,
don't trade her
yeah.
for chips. We're okay. We're okay.
You go with
buy
ketchup
your
or
wife a
salt and
bug.
vinegar, bro.
Listen. Sorry, Stefan under the bus. He's not even here. So Stefan normally would be on our show, but Stefan's working. He's gonna try calling later on. We've had three among the family. We've had 3 babies in 3 weeks. So shouts to the new dads and to the dads that already have all that sort of stuff. Shout outs to Hosky though. Let's go one more time. Shout out to Hosky for that.
Well done.
If this is your first time watching our show, you need to know something. You need to know that we spend a lot of time preparing for what we do. It might feel like this is off the cuff, but we have meetings. We have a group chat that is literally going on all the time. And if we leave it and come back, we have 300 missed messages that we have to kind of catch up on. And we do all this stuff for not only for us hanging out, but for you, the viewer, for you, the person who's listening on a podcast. We also pay attention to what's going on in the news, what's going on in culture, and to the world around us in preparation for our show. And we have segments together, but every so often the world kind of shifts, and we kind of decide to kind of scrap what we have planned to be able to talk about what's going on in our world. And this past week, the week that we're recording this episode, has just been a week like no other. And so we're going to spend our time talking about it. So to kind of recap some things that happened on Monday, May the 25th at 8:30 p.m., George Floyd was detained as a suspect in a reported forgery by Minneapolis PD. He was handcuffed and he was physically pinned down by officers, with one keeping his knee along his neck, making him incapacitated and rendering him unconscious. He was pronounced dead at 9:25 p.m. The next day, Tuesday, May 26th, Christian Cooper, an avid bird watcher, was in Central Park doing what he enjoys, looking at birds, when a woman was walking through the park with her dog off of a leash in an area where the dog was supposed to be on a leash. Discussion ensued between the both of them, where Christian asked for her to put her dog on a leash. And to make a long story short, she threatened to call the police on him, saying the exact words, "I'm going to tell them that an African-American man is threatening me." Injustice sucks. I think we all know that. And we happen to be minorities on this show. And these things hit us different than anything else. And there's a lot of feelings that we all have, and a lot of feelings that you may have surrounding these situations, other situations that happened in the exact same week frame. And so we're going to take time to talk about them. We're going to take time to discuss and to disagree and agree, and hopefully find some semblance in terms of what we can do in light of this moving forward as a people, as a society, as a culture. So to get started, we're going to take a listen to what happened to Christian Cooper.
Please don't come close to me.
I'm taking pictures calling the cops.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
Would you please stop? Sir, I'm asking you to stop.
Please don't come close to me.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop recording me.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to
And
me.
I'm taking pictures calling the cops.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, I'm in the Ramble, and there is a man, African-American, he has a bicycle helmet. He is recording me and threatening me and my dog. There is an African-American man. I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog. And my... I'm sorry, I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in the ramble. Please send the cops immediately. Cops immediately. I'm in Central Park in the ramble. I don't...
So Tim, we'll start with you, man. So when you saw that video and saw the clip of that, what were some things that came to your mind? What do you think about?
For me, it's like, is this happening? It leaves me speechless. Like, truthfully, it's like I went back to watch it again to get within the mindset, and it's like I couldn't finish it. I had to stop. It's one of those things that it's like I am without words, and I think it's also one of the things that it doesn't make it any better, especially knowing that she's Canadian. The thing where we like to think that we are better than this, it just leaves me saddened, disgusted, dumbfounded. Yeah, it's like I am at a loss of words, truthfully.
Reem?
Yeah. Honestly, the thing that sucks about it is that I'm not even surprised. Unfortunately, I know that that's the sentiments that a lot of individuals within society have towards people of color. And they understand that if they say things like this young lady said, that, you know, that exactly what she thought would come to pass is going to come to pass, because she understands that when Black people are the way she thinks we are. And it's just honestly sad that that is the reality of where we are as a society. And a lot of people like to believe that we're not like that, but the reality is we are. So it's not that I was shocked per se. It was one of those things where I just realized that this is just the way things are. And in that, I'm sad. It's sad. It's saddening.
Yeah, when I first saw that video, and when I found out immediately after that she was from Canada, the first thing that comes to mind is that this is chess, not checkers. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
And she understands the system in which we operate. That being said, I forget which week it was. I think it was, it may have been Jason or Adam that mentioned the fact that this is the same spirit manifesting in two different ways. Racism in Canada is that type of racism. And we're going to talk about a different kind of racism, which is more blunt and more aggressive and violent in a moment. But the racism that we see inside of Canada is hidden in the nuance, in the sleight of eye, in the tone, and it's just as bad and just as hurtful and demeaning, and it perpetuates the wrong message. So when I first saw that video, I was not surprised. I was not surprised she was Canadian. And if anything, it just sheds light on how people's behavior are systematic and thought out to a full extent.
Yeah.
Jason, our brother who is born stateside, who has a different perspective than us. Why do you think people in general, society in general, see minorities, in particular Black men, as threatening?
Well, you know what? I think this is something that stems back from hundreds of years ago. You think about it, Africa was one of the last continents to be colonized. One reason was obviously because of many of the Europeans who would come there weren't able to handle some of those diseases and climates as well. But then also, even when we look at the Americas, when just with the whole slave trade. So in the slave trade, you had 10 to 20% of most slaves didn't even make it across during the Middle Passage. But then once they did come across, if you think about it, many of the people who were there genetically, many of the African Americans were bigger, were stronger, and even that's actually something that even happens today. So maybe the fact that you know that sometimes we might seem bigger, faster, stronger physically, then maybe that might strike some fear into some people without having an actual interaction with some of us.
Yeah, Jason, I think it even like you see it so prevalent today in a lot of the movies that we watch. Like when you look at a movie that is depicting gang violence or a ghetto neighborhood, you see minorities there, and they're the aggressive ones. They're the ones that are popping off. They're the ones that are throwing hands. You look at our music. Our music is full of that. Like there's songs that literally say like, when I walk down the street, that shorty better go on the other side, or anything like that. Like they're literally feeding into this culture and this habit of, yeah, when I walk down the street, you better go on the other side. You look at a lot of the front runners, even in a lot of some music just like 5-6 years ago with like NWA, where they're literally saying like, man, I don't care about no police, like come for me. All of this exaggerated aggression, and this is where a lot of it gets pinned. And I think we talked about it a little bit last week, where you have that person in power now that we tend to seem is immune to that factor of this prejudice, where they don't see the aggressive side of that. But the very moment where they mess up, where they slip up the tiniest bit, they are now labeled as that. And it's disgusting, to be honest, that if someone reaches a certain pinnacle of fame, that they kind of get out of the stereotype, but the moment they mess up, you throw that stereotype back on them. And a great example of this is Michael Vick. Yes, Michael Vick was wrong. We can all agree that he was abusing dogs, but he was victimized. He was attacked by a bunch of people because of that, and now thrown down to that level because the picture of a minority to them was that, and they felt that they had to respond in a way that was more aggressive than what he was painted as. But then on the flip side, you see this whole Tiger King, and I'll be the first person to say, like, I enjoyed that series. But the problem with that is when you look at the way that he was treating these tigers, and it was blatant that he was euthanizing them before they needed to be euthanized. He was torturing them. He put insane conditions for them, and now he's a celebrity and he's famous, and he is put on this pedestal where people are like, man, that's so cool, like I want to be him. You look at Carol Baskin, people are looking at these two guys where there's TikTok videos of these guys. He's not even in jail for that. He's in jail for something completely different. But that aspect of what Michael Vick was criticized for, what he was attacked for, is now praised for this man. And it's all because that essence of, oh, he's not aggressive. He cared for them, because that was the whole biggest debate behind it is, yeah, he may have fell off, but he genuinely cared. And I think that's where this stereotype, this disgusting culture of, man, I'm gonna look at this minority in this way, is just, it's heavily portrayed by the music we allow, the videos, the popularity, the immunity factor, where it plays in, and it destroys the perception of minorities in that way.
Yeah, like it creates a stereotype that we are something of an animal, or we're something of an excuse or an alibi. So, for example, you know, this is not just the one thing that happened this week. Facts. So on the 25th, the same day of George Floyd, you had a youth pastor. The headline was, "Youth pastor claims he was kidnapped by a black man to avoid admitting he was in a hotel room with a hooker having an affair." And so, you know, he thought, let me just use a black man, because everyone would believe a black man would kidnap me. You know, in my neighborhood, maybe a black man would kidnap me. And then a few days before that, a Florida mother who said 2 black men abducted her autistic son actually drowned the boy in a canal. And so the problem was, she tried to drown him in 2 different canals. The first canal, she tried to push him in. Someone saw her push him in, pulled the boy out, and she went to another place. Now, why didn't you call the police on this white lady who tried to kill her son the first time, and then now she succeeded the second time. Whereas if this was a black man, there would be, SWAT team, everything, because all these stereotypes are portrayed as a black man is scary, a black man is vicious, a black man is violent, or they're ghetto, or whatever the case might be.
And the scary thing about that is, before, the idea was, well, if your pants are low and your clothes are a certain way, then you're living the stereotype. The scary thing about this Christian Cooper thing is, it was the opposite of what the stereotypical scary black man is. Harvard alum, person who worked for Marvel, a bird watcher. That's the only part about the story that actually makes me smile is the fact that he's a 57-year-old avid bird watcher who knows when you read about him as a person, he knows everything about every bird. And yet he doesn't fit the stereotype that Shay was mentioning. He doesn't fit that stereotype at all. He is the person that you want to bring home to your parents. And yet, in a moment of fear, he still fits this weird stereotype of I'm
not
in trouble,
being white,
of
not being white,
of being like Andrew said, being an animal, being something scary. And like Bart said, the fact that she had that trump card in her pocket to know I'm threatened, I know what to exactly say, is something that even in watching the video again irks me to no end. Bart, you and I, we talk a lot about privilege. We talk a lot about what that means and what that looks like, and all the judgments that gets put on people. What are some of your thoughts when it comes to the idea of people being able to kind of use that line of, well, I know who I think you are, and therefore I'm going to put your life in danger?
Yeah, it's tough because we tell each other that the world is an equal place. We teach our children that the opportunities are for everyone, and that's the ideal. In reality, we're not there yet. Last week we spoke about the Rooney Rule, and Adam brought up the whole analogy of we are moving the needle forward slowly but surely. This is something that we are working on. But here's the facts. The facts are, it's not an equal playing ground, and at the same time, the people with the advantage, even those who would say that they are advocates, do not always do the job of advocacy. And this is where I would say the position of advocacy needs to be foremost on those who have privilege and whose eyes are open. Obviously, if we don't see eye to eye on equal opportunity and on fairness and just for all, then of course you're not going to be our advocate. But at the same time, if there are a lot of people who I think are in our camps, in the sense that they support us, that are white people that see the system and they see the privilege that they have, that need to step into that role. I know you're going to ask other people about this as well, Chase. So I think people need to check themselves very strongly, and there needs to be a boldness on our end as people of color that we stand up and say, not only is this wrong, but we also call out the very people and the very systems that are perpetuating the idea of elitism. And I don't mean that in terms of finance. I mean that in the sense of fundamental understanding. And that's exactly what O'Shea was speaking to, in the sense that it confirmed a stereotype. And so I can now play that card. Yeah. You now confirm this idea I already had. So we have to check that seed of where does that start and where does that begin, so that somebody who is in a place of privilege has to understand how they play their card accurately and not only to their favor. Yeah. Those are a lot of big questions, I think, for down the road and how we move things forward.
Facts.
Yeah, James Baldwin says there's a certain certainty that ignorance paired with power, that it's the most ferocious enemy to justice. And I think as we talk about privilege and we see the abuse of it in a moment like this, in moments like this, to know what card to play, the ace, just throwing it on the table, that's so ignorant. It's an abuse of your power. And what it does is that what I have found it do this week in the different conversations that I've had, different live chats, different DM conversations, text messages, phone calls, is that it puts the people who are genuinely interested in seeing change in this very awkward position to say, I look like them and I acknowledge that I have privilege and power, but I'm not like them. Except sometimes what they feel like is the people who look like us, people of color, are getting at them as if they were those that abuse power and privilege. And I think there's an important conversation to have as to, okay, how do you identify privilege? I've seen lots of great posts, lots of good conversations started. And then what do we do from there? How do we not abuse that? And I don't think that we're off the hook as people of color, because I don't know if we always exercise our privilege to our advantage and to the advantage of those that are needing to be educated. And that's a different conversation. I'm sure we'll come across that thought a little bit later. But I do think that we have to take a look at that. Are we being ignorant? Are we abusing power? And are we okay with acknowledging that we may be a ferocious enemy of the justice that we are all hoping to see?
And the thing about privilege, and just to tie it in there before we transition to George Floyd, is you said it. We all have privilege. We were saying it in the renewal conversation and in different conversations, like we have a YouTube show. That's a privilege.
Yeah.
We have microphones and cameras and ad hoc lighting. Well, besides Adam has Hosky has legitimately the rig of all rigs. Like he has the sanctuary of I get it, let's go. Right? The rest of us are literally hanging Christmas lights in our houses trying to make it all work.
I just got
I got no lights.
Just kind of I have my son holding a flashlight on me the entire time.
Screen.
Right? We all have we have privilege ourselves. It's systematic, and the idea it's easy to say white privilege and then people kind of get their backs up. It's easy to say black privilege and people go, well, we have none. But it's systematic privilege, and we all have some sort of systematic privilege. Right. And it's all on how we wield that privilege. Yeah. Do we help somebody? Do we give somebody a hand to pull them up? Or do we push them down and then use them while they're down to be a stepping stool? And that's what that lady did. She pushed Christian Cooper down, and she used him to step on him to kind of get her own way. And ultimately, she lost her adopted dog. She lost her job. And now recently she's now banned from Central Park. I don't know how you banned a person from a park, but that's what big. That's what happened. You play the trump card and you lost. But it's important for us to remember, we all have some sort of privilege, and how we use it, it really matters, because for some people, it's a matter of life and death.